Table tennis rubbers are expensive, and sometimes you want to reuse them from one blade to the next. But you got to get that glue off, and it doesn't come off so easily. You want to turn this sponge into this, but a lot of times it ends up looking like this. So today, we're going to use MENDER glue. I've heard about this for a long time, and I just tested it out. It works really well. So you put a layer of MENDER glue onto the sponge, which already has the old glue on it. So just like you would normal table tennis glue. Then you let it dry, and then when you remove it, it pulls off the old glue as well. And it seems to work. You know, it does a really nice job. So let's check it out. So you can use one or more layers. The more glue you use, the easier it is to, do. So that last one that I just tested out worked well with one layer. Actually, this I can tell, this is more glue, but since I'm using this glue to remove the other glue layer, it doesn't have to be perfectly even or uniform, and it actually, like I said, it pays to have more glue on there for this purpose, because you want a nice thick layer all across the sponge so that when you peel it off, it mostly stays together. You're gonna have to peel it off in portions, but still. So you can see it's pulling up quite a bit, a little bit more than I need to do. Also, I have it on this rubber covering, so it's not perfectly flat. So it's gonna have more in the middle, but I don't think it's a big deal in this case. If I was assembling a rubber, I'd be a little concerned. So that's the first one. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right. I'll put a little more on, but I also have quite a bit in this sponge. This is a pretty liquidy glue, let's say. You know, like Revolution 3 glue, for example, comes in a few different viscosities, normal, medium, and thick, I think. So this is a pretty, as I said, liquidy glue. Spreads well, but it supposedly dries quite quickly. It's a fabric glue, I think. It's made for other types of things. Pretty cheap. Seen it recommended for a long time for this purpose of removing old glue. You can also use it to assemble rackets just fine. I don't think it's all that different from regular table tennis glue. So like I said, you can use more layers if you want. I'm just trying to make sure there's a good amount of glue everywhere. I find the edges and stuff, as long as you get a good amount of glue all around there, and it kind of extends to the limits, you'll get a good adhesion, and it'll pull it off. So you can see it's white now. You wait for it to dry until it gets clear, and then you start to remove the old glue. So let's see if it works. It's going to take about at least 20 minutes, I would say. I'll be back. All right, so just about 30 minutes have passed, or about 28 minutes. I can see this one's dry, basically. This one's not quite so dry. You can see where I stuck my finger in there at some point and got it stuck on my finger, interestingly enough. So just like normal table tennis glue, the MENDER wipes off your finger, wipes off other surfaces really easily, so you don't have to worry about that. Let's start with removing the glue on this one. And that one might be dry by the time we're done, or we might have to wait a little longer. This one's a little wet, still I can feel it, but it's fine. So you get it started. Your goal is to be able to pull it up more so than roll it with this, because rolling it up, well, it's not as quick and it's also more likely to damage the sponge, but sometimes it's all you can do, especially if you're not using this method. But this is, so far, so good. Like I said, just keep trying to peel it. The more layers you use, supposedly it'll come off more together. So I think it's a balancing act, because you don't want to run out of your MENDER glue right away, even though it's not super expensive. It's still a finite resource, let's say. And you'll have to replace the glue more often if you're using more layers, obviously. So, gotten this one started so far. I'll check back in about, let's say 10 minutes, we'll be able to do this one. All right. So I've got it about halfway done, let's say. Don't hold me to that, but I wanted to show you the actual easiest method is you set it down, and then you peel it up with two hands. That's easier, right? Look. I didn't want to leave you wondering. So more layers, the easier that'll be to do, but for the most part, you do that. The harder the sponge, the less careful you have to be, let's say, because a soft sponge is more easily damaged when you're doing this. Especially, like I already said, if you're not using the MENDER glue to do it, if you're just trying to peel the glue off. So softer sponges, a little harder, more difficult to deal with, at least to do so without damaging them. But harder sponges like Dignics and other hybrid rubbers, comes off a little easier. You can see it peeled off a little bit there. That's why they say it's easier to, or it's preferred to pull up, not roll for the time being. And then hurricane sponges, I've noticed the glue comes off really nicely in like a uniform layer, because the sponge is also so dense and hard. So Dignics 09C, I like that because the dense sponge on that one is very durable in my opinion. You can pull the glue off just normally without really damaging the sponge at all. It looks almost brand new. And the top sheet, stays usable for a while. So then if you can boost a sheet of Dignics 09C when it's old and give it some life back. Same with these other rubbers, but then you have to be a little more careful if the sponge is not as hard. All right, I'll check back in a bit. All right, so this one's done. You can see, more or less, a few little divots here and there. This is the Dignics 05, which has the slightly softer sponge compared to the 09C. So yeah, that's about expected. And also, there's also no guarantee that that was only on one blade before. That might have already been moved blades before this last time that it was moved. So you never know. All right, let's check this one out. This one I put a lot of glue on, and it was kind of folded in a way. Don't worry, like I said, that'll wipe off when I want it to. Don't put it on the table, though. Anyway, let's see. It's, like I said, it's not... Still a little too wet. Give it some time. Wanted to show you real quick. This is a Dignics 09C with glue residue where I have not used the MENDER yet. And you can see this is actually a good candidate for being able to pull off like this because, like I said, Dignics 09C. The sponge is not easily damaged, and this glue is peeling up, right? So if you sit here, spend a good amount of time, you'll get it, all the way across, let's say. Be careful not to rub your fingers so much that you end up getting blisters. You might not know it until a little later, then they'll be really sore, especially if you're also wiping glue residue off your blade at the same time. So be careful with that. That's happened to me before if you're doing like multiple blades especially. Then later on you're sitting there like, wow, my finger is hurting, and you want to play table tennis, but you can't. Or you can, but it's painful. Anyway, moving on. Just wanted to show you that. So this is why later on I'm going to put that MENDER on this one as well. Make it easy because this one came off so easily. I have high hopes for this one. Once it dries, I put a little too much on that one. And honestly, I have a lot of old rubbers, so I think I'm going to go through them, get the glue off the old ones, put some booster on some old sponges, test some different things out on different blades. All right, check back with you maybe 15 minutes, let's say, and then we'll do this last one. I actually got impatient and did a layer on this other 09C that I was just showing you a second ago. You can see that's still the edge where I was messing it. So I didn't put as much glue on this one. You'll see it'll actually dry quicker. Probably won't be that far off, maybe 15, 20 minutes for this one. All right, we're about 45 minutes after I glued the second one. Used too much glue, as I've mentioned. Now it is dry. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. So mostly clear, but since I put a ton on, the certain spots are not so clear. But either way, you can see it's dry. You can touch it. Just feels rubbery. No adhesive really at this point. So let's start over here, I guess. Yeah, sometimes finding the starting point can be a little tough just because, you don't want to damage the rubber where you start, let's say, but you also need a place where you can get a little bit of a grip into it. So this is maybe a rubber where it would benefit from multiple layers of MENDER from what I can gather so far as I feel it. But I think we can make it work. All right, so we got started, you can see. I'll mention it one more time, but yeah, you can do more layers of MENDER, it'll make it easier. I just don't want to waste my new beautiful bottle of MENDER. What is it, fabric adhesive? Yeah, fabric and leather adhesive. Got it off Amazon. It's like 10 or 11 bucks. So, pretty good deal. That's a pretty big bottle, and if I'm only, for the time being, using it for glue removal, should get me through quite a few rubbers. And if you figure, these are expensive Dignics rubbers, and I'm getting the glue out, making them so they can be not only played with properly normally, but you can also boost them really nicely without any old glue residue. So look how easily this is coming off. Pretty crazy. These 09Cs definitely have already been on 2 blades. So even if I do a perfect job here, there might still be little divots and things from the first blade removal. I wasn't doing that so close camera. So yeah, you get the point. It's working. I'm going to, like I said, you lay it down, find a place to get it started, and then you pull it up. It's easier like this because you press it down onto the table, and then you just peel up the glue, right? You just kind of keep doing that. Be patient. Definitely take your time, especially if you're using, or if you're working on rubbers with softer sponges, medium hard, soft sponges. These are hard sponges, especially the 09C, so I don't worry so much about damaging it. I already know how it responds more or less. Yeah, give me a second and I'll finish this up. All right, as you can see, there it is. Looks pretty darn good. Like I said, Dignics 09C sponge. Doesn't lay down too much. A few little divots here and there, but like I said, this rubber's already been on a blade twice and taken off twice. So let's look at this residue I talked about. So I got some glue on the front of the rubber. Let's see if anything goes wrong. Oh no, I got table tennis glue on my rubber. What do I do? You just rub it off and then it's okay. You'll be okay. So let me know if you used MENDER before with success, unsuccessfully. If you have a different method for removing old glue residue from your sponges, let me know as well. It'll be very interesting. I'm sure we can discuss it in the comments. But yeah, this is a much easier method of removing glue residue from a sponge than just picking at it. And that's that. So now we can reuse these rubbers on a new blade, try out some different combinations, I think. I'm putting the 209Cs on this Viscaria. I recently sanded it down a bit after watching the Zhang Jika video about sanding blades, and I used some like shoe glue, which is almost like super glue, but a little more flexible, a little more, I don't know, whatever, and put it on the edges, sanded it down, so now it's pretty smooth, pretty nice. Similar weight to my Harimoto, but the Harimoto has the wider face, as you can kind of see, but kind of can't because it's a vertical video. Anyway, this one's going to get some new rubbers on it sometime, but not in a rush. This one's going to get the 09C, and let's try it out. So thanks for watching. Shout out to MENDER Glue. Check it out. See you later.